a huge fan of this genre, this mix of genres. It's got Indiana Jones vibes, National Treasure vibes. It's got James Rollins vibes, Dekker vibes. It's got all these different things that you pull together. Power of fiction is.
Yeah, the power of fiction is huge. I mean, it has some of the biggest influences, I think, on our lives, whether we realize it or not. Growing up, I watched Rambo, First Blood, and Predator. I read Vince Flynn and Brad Thor and all of these guys. And the byproduct of that was, I want to go be a special operator. Fiction, it really gets you, and it gets you from a young age too. I think you get storylines that stick with you throughout your life and really help shape and mold who you become as a person. I don't think I could write nonfiction. I think that would be very taxing and probably exhausting for me. Kind of the same way that I don't know that I would want to write a straight thriller where there's a special operations guy that's hunting terrorists. It's a life that I lived for a long time. But taking characters with those backgrounds and putting them into a different kind of environment, one that I love and that I find fun and new and exciting and adventurous, is definitely freeing, and it's very fun to do at the same time.
Is that much of it? That's not much of a change for you, right?
My name is Kerry Kite. I used to load bombs in the Air Force, and now I'm a writer, a filmmaker, and an entrepreneur. Through using the post 9/11 GI Bill to go to college, working hourly jobs to pay the bills, and freelancing my way into a career, I've studied what it takes to successfully transition from service to civilian, and that study has become a conversation. On this podcast, I speak to other veterans, successful artists and entrepreneurs about their transition, what they did well, where they failed, what they learned, and most importantly, how they applied their skills. Episode 181 features Alex Dekker, an Army Special Forces veteran and the debut novelist of Desert Heist, a high-adventure story set in the Arabian Peninsula and across the world. Welcome. This is Veteran Made. Our merch store is live at store.veteranmadeproductions.com. Grab hats, t-shirts, and hoodies in both performance and tri-blend cotton fabrics. Use code VM-5OFF for 5% off your purchase. Veteran Made is also sponsored by GoPills, a military-grade nootropic that contributes to brain health over time. Use code VM15 at checkout for 15% off. I get my collagen protein from Bubs Naturals, where you can use code VETERANMADE, all one word, at checkout for 20% off your order. We're also proud to partner with True Made Foods, which makes condiments free from added sugar and sweetened with real foods. Use code VET at checkout for 15% off. We love socks in this house. I get my wife new socks every Christmas. More importantly, we love American-grown and made socks. Use code VETERANMADE15 at rucksocks.com for 15% off. And lastly, I end my day with Rack Out from Bravo Actual to maintain quality sleep, resulting in a well-rested body and mind. Use code VETERANMADE with a space between the words at checkout for 15% off your order. Enjoy the episode.
We are live. Good afternoon from the great state of Tennessee. For me, I'm traveling for work. Good afternoon from the great state of South Carolina. Alex Dekker, welcome to Veteran Made.
Thank you for having me.
Stoked to have you, man. We're here. This is where I would hold up the book, but I read the PDF version, so I've just got it on the iPad there. But I'm excited to get the physical copy. We're here talking about. There it is, right there. Desert Heist, your debut novel. How does it feel to have shipped it?
Awesome. It feels great. I just got the hardcovers in the mail just a couple of days ago. So very awesome to see it all put together in its final stage, and with all the time and work and effort that went into it, not just by me, but by so many people with cover design and editing and everything else. It's wild to see it all come together. It's really awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. I saw that video that you posted using the Yarborough knife to open up the box, which obviously is a bit of an Easter egg for those that will read the book. I mean, it's interesting because I really want to talk about sort of the power of fiction here a little bit. I think there's a lot of special operations veterans obviously have over the last few or several decades at this point written a lot of memoirs and written a lot of nonfiction and written a lot of sort of no shit, there I was stories, right? And then here you are sort of taking up the mantle from some of the recent greats and telling this fictional story, right? Which I think reads extremely well. I mean, I'm a huge fan of this genre as it is this kind of mix of genres, both on the kind of film and TV side. It's got Indiana Jones vibes, National Treasure vibes. It's kind of got all those, but then it's got James Rollins vibes, right? And it's got Jack Carr vibes. It's got all these kind of different things that you pull together. For you, like what what do you feel like the sort of power of fiction is to put pen to paper and tell a fictional story that obviously weaves your own experiences? Like, did you find that freeing? Did you find it exciting? Did you find it challenging? I'm sure all of it, but
Yeah, so the power of fiction is huge. I mean, it has some of the biggest influences, I think, on our lives, whether we realize it or not. But I know growing up, I watched Rambo, First Blood, and Predator, movies like this. I read Vince Flynn and Brad Thor and all of these guys, and the byproduct of that was I want to go be a special operator. That motivates me in a way that not to say that nonfiction doesn't. Nonfiction definitely does. I read Marine Sniper by Carlos Hathcock probably 20 times in high school, and Jesse Puller's autobiography and a bunch of other stuff, but or biography, I guess. But fiction, it really gets you, and it gets you from a young age too. I think you get storylines that stick with you throughout your life and really help shape and mold who you are, who you become as a person. So I think the power of fiction is very important. As far as putting my own personal experiences into it, I have said that I don't think I could write nonfiction. I talked to Robert Pelton a little while back, and he had mentioned you should write a book about your life or something along those lines. And I don't think that I could. I think that would be very taxing and probably exhausting for me. But taking some of those experiences and incorporating them into fiction, kind of the same way that I don't know that I would want to write a straight thriller where there's a special operations guy that's hunting terrorists. It's kind of a life that I lived for a long time. I would think I would find that exhausting as well. But taking characters with those backgrounds and putting them into a different kind of environment, one that I love and that I find fun and new and exciting and adventurous, is definitely freeing, and it's very fun to do at the same time.
yeah, I think it's great. I mean, there's a couple of places I kind of want to go with that environment that you created, and this sort of the setting. I think both like physically, geographically and sort of temporally a little bit, but for fiction, it's interesting because I think statistically, like, men tend to read more nonfiction as adults, and women tend to read more fiction. But if we think about ourselves as boys, like, I'm the same way, right? Like, I grew up watching these movies and consuming, the screen, right? Like the big screen that way. And then I actually found myself like reading screenplays in high school, which is kind of how I ended up finding myself into this field post military. But I grew up reading so many novels, and it's funny. My grandma was my biggest influence on the reading front. Her and my dad. My dad more on the like sword and sorcery, sort of fantasy, science fiction side. And then my grandma read like all of these books. Like, I had the opportunity to interview Brad Thor a few months ago, and like when I was a kid, like he was her favorite, and she read Clancy and she read like all of these other ones. And Jack and I have talked about this over the years. Like his grandma's reading list and my grandma's reading list were like remarkably similar. And it's interesting. Like, as boys, we tend to consume this stuff, and we place ourselves into those environments as we read them or watch them right on the screen. And then something happens as we get older, right? And then we just tend towards this, not at least statistically, towards nonfiction. And I read a lot for the podcast, obviously, but then just for my own enjoyment, I try to mix it up with fiction and nonfiction. But the more, I think, as adult males that we read fiction, we can actually recapture that. I found myself reading this and kind of recapturing that love of the genre and of story, and feeling like a boy again in the best way possible, like reading this book.
That's great. That's high praise, and that's exactly what I was going for. I wanted to have some, obviously, some inject of my own personal experiences to make it kind of authentic in that regard. If you're having some of the action going on and things of that nature, that would come across as authentic. That's what I wanted it to be. I also wanted it to be grounded in history enough that you learn something. Hopefully when people read this, they didn't know about Philby or Bertram Thomas or some of this stuff or hydrology in Saudi Arabia or whatever it might be. And so you get to learn something too. So I always enjoyed reading fiction when I was younger that I actually learned something from as well. But I wanted both of those wrapped up and encompassed in essentially high adventure. So at the end of the day, the important thing, those are important. The overarching important thing is you have a good time reading it, that you enjoy reading it. When you put it down, you felt like it was worth your time, it was worth the read, and you got something out of it, and hopefully look forward to the next one. So kind of wanted to bring all of those together.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you got, it was interesting because when I read it, and I read it recently, David sent it a while back. I always try to read these pretty close to when we do the interview so that it's fresh.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished it the other night on this trip. It was perfect airplane reading because I was delayed quite a bit. So just like sitting on the tarmac and reading, I'm like, man, this is great. Like I'm enjoying this. We don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to get to the gate yet because I'm just going to keep reading. And it's awesome because it blends all these different genres, right? There's the element of thriller. There's the element of sort of, not quite like political thriller, but like it has those geopolitical, feel. It kind of has that, like soft action thriller, but then it kind of has this, espionage feel to it. But then, and I don't like want to give anything away, but you sort of get into this interesting, obviously ancient civilizations are pretty clear for anybody who reads the jacket and the description on Amazon or wherever they're going to get the book. But then you also get into like, you're kind of like almost touching megaliths, and you're talking about Göbekli Tepe and like all these things that are sort of hitting a certain corners of the internet right now as we're talking about, what our actual past was civilizationally, what informed it, who built these things, where they came from, where they touched other civilizations that we haven't quite like learned about from traditional or mainstream education. Where did that interest come for you? Is that something you discovered later in life? Is that something that you discovered through your own adventures? I mean, what took you down this path?
So I've always loved history. I've always found it fascinating. When I was a kid in elementary school, and it was time to finish with history and put your history book in your desk and change over to math, I was the guy that kept it out and was reading about the seven wonders of the ancient world or whatnot. That was always kind of my fascination. It's what I've always loved, always been interested in my off time, my downtime. I read about history. I get on historic rabbit holes. And so having the opportunity to incorporate that into fiction and write about this stuff is it's great. It's the kind of stuff I do anyway. So now it's for more of a purpose than just my own personal knowledge and enjoyment. And so very fun to tie that all together. There's so much in history that we just don't know. And the more we discover, the more we realize that we don't know. And so, I had the idea of this book to write Desert Heist and have some of these key features, but I also had the idea to write a larger overarching story that explores some of that hidden past, some of the forgotten past, I guess, that we don't know about. And so my agent Alexandra calls me an idea factory, but I have books planned out for quite a while and outlined, and I sort of know where I want them to go within the Nate Wilde series, which is fun because it then allows me to use that real history to build towards something and to tie all those pieces back into every book. So there's, you mentioned the Yarborough Easter egg. There's Easter eggs in book one in Desert Heist that will not become apparent to people until book 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever it might be. They're going to be able to go back and look and see and read what that was and realize the importance now that you didn't realize at the time. So it's fun to be able to do that out in this broad, overarching kind of lost history narrative.
Yeah, it's cool. It very much reads like I'm not surprised to hear you say that there's a series here, because it very much reads like an origin story. I think one of the interesting things about, I say like this genre, like this obviously mixes like a handful of different genres, but if we're thinking about thrillers, I think there's like a couple of different ways that different authors do it, right? One is like, hey, there's a template here, right? And so then this character that I've created is going to then be dropped into this template in a different time and in a different geographic location, and he's going to have the same adventure with slightly different details. Or there's like what Jack does with James Reese, like taking him, and it's a different story every time. It's not templatized. There's no right or wrong answer. Obviously, there's just there's kind of the matter of like doing whatever you're doing excellently. This one like very much reads like, I am getting to know these characters, and as I'm getting to know them, you take your time introducing them and who they are and how they meet each other or have met each other, rekindle relationships, right? Rebuild relationships, and the sort of like ramp that you created with this sort of, taking your time to introduce us to these people and then ramping it up there at the end. Like you created this sort of, forward thrust, is to steal from another author that I talked to recently of like, oh man, this is cool. Like I now feel like I'm a part of this group, and now I want to go with them on the next thing. You didn't just like drop us right into the adventure. You really took your time getting there.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm glad that came across. Then obviously I want the reader to have a connection to the characters, right? Because they're the characters themselves they're fictional. They're based off kind of a conglomeration of different personality types that I met working throughout my career in different special operations units and things like that. I borrow a piece here, borrow a piece there, to kind of build these characters out and have their interactions kind of flow and feel natural. One of the best things about being in special operations is being on a team, and it really becomes like your second family. You get to know these people very well. You spend 8-9 months a year with them in different situations and living in tight quarters, things like that. So it really is a second family. And so it develops its own personality and dynamic. The trick is encapsulating that dynamic and then putting that on the page for the reader to feel like they're part of that too. So I'm glad that that came across to you.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, there's like I was on the conventional side of the house in the Air Force in a support role, but it was a small unit team that I was on. I loaded bombs on fighter jets, and so we worked in 3-man crews, and then there was obviously like multiple kind of crews a shift as we were working, and so very similar feel. And I also feel like people who didn't serve in the military but played on a sports team or work on a team and a civilian job or whatever, can relate to that. And then you obviously use the sort of fun background of special operations that most people don't get to touch. Like you throw some of those details in that feels lived in, and feels accurate, while also like there's a certain I guess flair to this group of people, like as they come together, like the banter and the shit talk and like all those different things, like very much feels like, oh, I could see that being the way like an ODA works, but like also my high school football team was like that too, so like you can kind of have that feel and vibe, which is really cool. So I'm curious, I've heard you talk about this on a couple of podcasts that you've done before this, and I think it's interesting for military veterans who are transitioning out or have transitioned out into whatever field, if it's something creative like this or anything else. You've talked about the team that's around you, from a marketing standpoint, a PR standpoint, from the agent standpoint, from those teams being the best of the best, and that's kind of why you chose them, why they chose you, and why you've gotten along so well. Can you talk about what it's been like for you to integrate with people who don't have the same background that you do, but they do have the same desire for an execution of excellence?
For sure. Yeah. So it's been great. They definitely chose me, which is great. And I'm very humbled and grateful for that. So my agent, Alexandra Machinist, is wonderful and top notch. Emily Bessler, and everybody at Emily Bessler Books. Atria Simon Schuster is wonderful. David Brown, publicist, all great, all top of their game. What I liken it to is that I worked with the elite of the elite within the military, and I get the opportunity to work with the elite of the elite within publishing now. So it's great. It makes everything very easy, very smooth lined. What's interesting is that now when you're in the military, and this too, I'm sure, and you're interacting with individuals outside of the military, especially if there's like one, say a civilian who's within your group, it's natural for them to get lost in some of the jargon and the lingo, acronyms, things like that, because it's really just a different culture. I'm now the outsider, so there's been a couple of times where there's either been conversations or a Zoom call or email traffic, and they're talking about whatever it might be, and I have to be the one to raise my hand and ask the question and say, what does this mean? And they're like, oh, we forget, you don't know. So everybody is really great about that. It's funny to be on this side. As far as working with them in that kind of capacity, I think you mentioned Jack Force of Jack Carr. We have a lot of the same team, and so he very much, I think, paved the way for me so that they understand the military and special operations vibe and lingo and kind of way of thinking a little bit. So certainly not jarring. It's been a very smooth transition process, and a very good one. It's great that I will think up things or have questions or have ideas, and what I find is that whether it's David on the publicity side or Emily's team or what it might be, or the cover design team, they're already 10 steps ahead of what I'm thinking. And so it's really great to be able to work with such high caliber professionals in this realm as I did in my previous job.
Yeah. I mean, what are some of the things that you've learned, right? I mean, like when we transition out, it's important to stay connected to the military community, to stay connected to the veteran community, right? But it's also important to integrate into this new community, this new culture, reintegrate really, obviously. And for a lot of us, it's, we enlisted when we were younger, right? And so it's this, and if you've served a full career, like that was a long time ago. And then now you're reintegrating into this culture and in this side of society it's quite a bit different than when you were here last, and then you're quite a bit different than when you were here last, right? And so staying connected to the community is great, but then learning to reintegrate and actually work with people. They have things to offer you, right? And you have things to offer them. Like, what's that give and take been like?
Again, been very smooth. There are things that it's like anything else. Whenever you start something new, it's learning the process, learning how it goes, learning, for example, timelines, right? The publishing timelines are much different than things are in the military. Military, it's very much you get things done as soon as possible, right? Publishing timeline is very long, slow, and deliberate, and it's that way for a reason, as they're building things up, taking things through the normal processes that they're supposed to go through. So understanding kind of how that works, learning what the publisher does, or what your agent does, versus what you're supposed to do. So there are certain things, I know Jack Carr's talked about how being an author is very much a business, and it is a business. And you have to do a lot of that business-like work. So when it comes to things like social media, or some of these other type things, no one's going to do that for you. By and large, it's up to you to figure out how that works and to make it work. And so coming from the military and special operations in particular, I did not have social media. I avoided it like the plague. I avoided the spotlight like the plague in general. And so learning to get comfortable with that and figure out what needs to be done to fill the gaps, because the publisher and everybody wants you to be successful, but you can't put it all on them. You need to also do what you can do to try to be successful as well, and figure out what those gaps are and then fill them.
Yeah, I mean, what's it been like to integrate into the author community, right? Because there's obviously a handful of authors in this space have military experience. A handful don't, but write military thrillers, and then there's others that write thrillers that aren't military thrillers, that don't have the military experience but have been writing books for 1, 2, 3 decades. Like, what's it been like to integrate into the author community?
It's been amazing. It is a very awesome, very gracious community. Everybody has been very welcoming. I had the opportunity a couple months ago to Thriller Fest for the first time in New York, and that was great. I got to meet a lot of people, and whether it was people I was meeting there, talking to them, or whether it's people that I talked to previously, reached out to, Brad Taylor, Steve Barry, Simon Gervais, David McCloskey, any of these guys that I reached out and just said, hey, are you interested in reading it? I expected expected nothing actually to hear anything back. Instead, I hear, "Oh, that's great! I'd love to take a look," and they provide a blurb for the book. And so everybody has been very nice, very welcoming, and just going to Thriller Fest, getting a chance to sit down and talk to authors. Very, very popular, traditionally published, established authors, all the way down to self-publishing authors and everybody in between. Everybody's very nice. Everybody is very supportive of the collective, and it's really awesome to see. And I don't know what I expected, but I did not expect it to be that welcoming and friendly. So very, very nice to see.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, it's been really cool to follow you on Instagram and see the feed of like all the different blurbs that you've been getting, from all these authors, right? Obviously, like, Jack wrote a blurb for you, which was cool. Greg Hurwitz, and all of these authors, to see that, like, I love to see that authors that I'm reading and talking to are also being read and talking to, this kind of inside that community of people, which I think is a lot of fun. So back to the book itself, I was struck as I got sort of, again, staying out of like spoilery territory, but I would say the final third of the book, the back half of the book, it has an Indiana Jones feel to it, right? Just because of the nature of the setting and sort of the action and the things that are happening. But I don't know if you've heard that, I think Spielberg and Lucas both said that essentially every Indiana Jones, I'm talking about the original three, I'm not talking about those last two that came out. The original three, they all said that Indiana Jones was about belief. Each story was about belief, right? And it was him coming to terms with what was true, given the setting and given the experiences that he was having in each of those adventures. And as I'm reading this, I'm like, man, feels like it's trending towards that direction. And sure enough, right, like that was like very much a theme, which I thought was very cool. Was that an intentional thing that you were writing into it, or is that something you discovered as you wrote?
So that was intentional. So the character of Nate Wilde, so he in the military was a special forces intelligence sergeant. So he's a Green Beret who's trying to do targeting and analysis for the team, for the ODA. And so part of that job requirement is you're the skeptic. You have to be skeptical. And so he's naturally skeptical about things. And so as he is doing his research, as he is uncovering these things, as he's putting the pieces together, he is coming to understand what it is, and he's coming to believe more and more in certain aspects of it. The first time he hears about it in the Lost City of Ubar in the book, he's very skeptical about it. And so we meet him at a point a little bit later where he's feeling better about it, and then he's really building it up. And so he doesn't just automatically believe. He's not necessarily a daydreamer. He's skeptical. That belief builds throughout the book, and we get to build with him as he's coming to that. He's very much in the vein of Fox Mulder. He wants to believe. He just needs to see the proof first. And so that is absolutely one thing that I wanted to weave into the story.
Yeah, very much. It feels like a throwback in the best way. Like there's an earnestness to him. And I think there's an earnestness to the group of characters that you created, but they have, they're 3-dimensional characters, right? Like there were things that, plot points that happen, and then story moments that happen that kind of weave it all together. That very much felt like a throwback, and you weren't like trying to, and I mean this as a total compliment. Like you weren't necessarily trying to tread new territory. You were just like, kind of, there's an originality to it of like, hey, this is the kind of story that we all love. Like, let me just tell this one really well, instead of trying to like create something new, which I think we're experiencing a lot in a lot of fiction right now. I think both in novel form and in films, of like people trying to do new things. It's like, no, let's do the old things that we know that work really, really well.
Yeah. So, Raiders of the Lost Ark came out 45 years ago. And everybody that loves this genre loves it. I love it. I love, the Indiana Jones movies in general. And there's a reason for that, because there's a certain magic about it. And writing this book, there are definitely certain parallels to the Indiana Jones style adventure, and I think that's okay. I think that we a lot of us crave something like that. And so in my head, I thought, again, I love the Indiana Jones movies. I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is a flawless film. When you look at the Indiana Jones movies, they're high adventure, they're huge entertainment. The history in it, we're taking a lot of liberties, right? They're making a lot of stuff up to put things together, and that's okay. It's super enjoyable. In my head, as I compare it, Desert Heist to the Indiana Jones films, the Indiana Jones kind of character story writ large is one, what if all the history was true? What if every single piece of history that they're looking at actually ties back to something that's well documented, that's well researched, that there's academic papers on, and so if you were to go look and start pulling on those threads, you would find that this all leads back to something real. That would be very cool. The second is Indiana Jones can punch a Nazi in the face better than anybody, and we learn some things, and there's some other, some of the later movies, and we maybe retcon a little bit about the Indiana Jones story of where he served and things he did. But, what if Indiana Jones, he can pull off a lot of amazing action sequences and things. What if he had a background that was grounded in that from the start, that there's a reason that he can do these things, and we don't need to suspend belief too much because he's done this in a former life. And so kind of putting those two things infused into an Indiana Jones style adventure was kind of the goal as I was writing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be super fun to take like one of your favorite genres and then your actual real life and smash them together, and then plus you add the historical accuracy to it. And that's got to be a very fun thing to do.
Yeah, I looked at what I know, and I know special operations. I had a 20-year career in it, and I looked at what I love, and I love ancient history, and so that's precisely what I did, was smash the two together, and the result is Desert Heist.
When did you start writing this? Was this, or when did you start writing in this way? Is this something that you were doing in service? Is this something you did after? Is this something you were like holding off until you got out of the service? Have you always wanted to be an author?
No, I've not always wanted to be an author. It's not something that I put any consideration at all into, I suppose. I wrote it towards the end of my service. I basically had been deploying and doing trips for so long that I needed what we call dwell time, which is when you're deployed or doing certain things for a period amount of time, you need to be home for a period of time. And so I got back from a trip and I'd kind of been going at a sprint for about almost a year and a half. And I was told by my command that I needed to chill out. I needed to calm down, just sit on my hands, do nothing, which is certainly not my strong suit. And so I needed something to do. And I kind of had this thought for a book. And so as I was going down one of my many historical rabbit holes, as I do, about the Lost City of Ubar, everything kind of clicked into place and it made sense. I spent a lot of time in the Middle East. I'm an Arabic speaker. I spent a lot of time in the Middle Eastern cultures. And so having a book set there makes sense. Having it with a historical kind of adventure, Indiana Jones style adventure, makes sense for what I've always enjoyed. And then having a special operations background for the protagonists also made sense, and it just kind of formulated. And so I wrote it. I wrote it in a couple of months. I wound up having a good enough time writing it that I wrote a second one, and I did not plan on doing anything with it, really. I put them away. I got back to work. And it wasn't a little bit later when I met my now wife that during us getting to know one another, it came up that I had written a book, and she asked to read it, and I was a little hesitant to let her read it, but I let her read it anyhow. She enjoyed it, so I let some buddies at the unit read it. They liked it, and then I kind of got convinced to send out some query letters from there, and my agent got back to me, and kind of the rest is history from there.
There's a lot of people that set out to be novelists that are screenwriters or whatever, and they can't finish a manuscript. But you didn't even want to be one necessarily, but you wrote an entire manuscript. What do you think it is about your mindset and heart set at that time that you were able to actually ship something? I mean, that's a big deal.
I think twofold. One, I have this character, it might be a flaw, I don't know, but I have the inability to quit things. And so it served me well in the military. I used to watch, whether I was going through different selections or dive school or whatever, I'd watch people quit stuff and just like, man, like a lot of respect for that guy. I don't have the, I don't have the courage to quit. I'm just going to keep on suffering through this, and not quitting will get you far in life. I'll say that. So the thought of not finishing it didn't really occur to me. One, two, it wasn't like it was, I think because I didn't set out to write a novel. I didn't set out to try to become an author or get published. I wrote Desert Heist for me. There wasn't anything quite out there like it. I had a story, so I sat down, I wrote it, and I read it, and I thought, oh, it's pretty good. I enjoyed that. And so I wrote another one, and I kind of intended just to kind of keep writing them anyway, almost as like a creative thought exercise, something that I could enjoy and just get these stories out on paper. And that was really enough. I expected to stay in the military for, another 10 years and then probably go do something else very similar. I didn't expect to get out and become an author. So it worked out well. And what works out well is I've had people ask me about my hobbies. I haven't really had hobbies, I guess, in the military. I've just been very focused on work. I guess researching history and reading was probably my biggest hobby. My hobby now is writing. It doesn't feel like work. I don't need to sit down at the computer and say, okay, I need to get 2,000 words out today. I just need the time to write. And whenever I do, I sit down and I enjoy doing the research. I enjoy writing. I have a great time doing it. And I would just, if I had the time and space, I would just write all day because it really is fun and enjoyable for me.
It's incredible. I'm jealous. I wish I had that kind of. I wish I had that kind of like unbridled joy for the creative process. It's funny. I think those of us that's like set out to do something. I think we fight this all the time, right? Like trying to, we put weirdly like too much effort into doing something the right way instead of just doing it right for the joy of it. And listen, I'm sure you went through an editing process yourself. And obviously, you have an editor at a major publishing house. So like, I'm sure you do revisions and there's things that are work adjacent, right? Like, it's not like you're like, okay, I wrote it and like, it's totally done. And, perhaps like closer to that than most would realize. But, it's funny, we live in a culture now, and I think especially military veterans, whether it's conventional or soft, or there's this creative output. You got to build a brand, you got to do these things, you got to make these things, and then you have to advertise how you do it, and then you have to sell off of like how you do it. And we're all obsessed with Stephen Pressfield, and we're all obsessed with Tim Ferriss, and we're all obsessed with all these other things. When you've got the secret, just sit down and do it, and then enjoy it, and let yourself enjoy it.
I think that's the thing. If you take the pressure off and you just enjoy what you're doing, like I said, if I sat down to write, a Brad Thor style novel, that may feel like work for me because that's not the style that I want to write. Just because I think I lived enough of that life that kind of stresses me out to think about writing something like that. But writing something that is something that I'm very interested in, and I very much enjoy the process and seeing it all come together. It makes it a fun experience. And I don't know that that's necessarily maybe marketable other than I feel like you should enjoy what you're writing. You should enjoy. The only time that I felt like the copy edits. So I did a round of edits with my editor, and she's wonderful. And there wasn't really much in the way of any significant changes. There's some questions, which naturally, and some of that was military questions and things like that. Like why is this way? And I could explain, and then that makes sense. But there wasn't anything really significant in the changes. The copy editing process. I had to go through a couple of rounds of the copy editing process. That is the first time that I had the thought, oh, this is a job. This is a job and this is work, because now I'm going through the manuscript for however many times at this point and, looking at the comma changes or whatever it might be. The copy editors are great and they go in depth, and especially when you have a book that has a lot of history and a lot of research in it, they're doing their own research as well to fact check things and to see. And so there's certain times where they, hey, I found this. Is this accurate? Is this, which gives you that moment, oh man, is that accurate? Was I wrong? And let me go back and pull all my resources and all the things that I gathered and all the, Bertram Thomas's handwritten notes and see where I found, this phrase or whatever it might be. And so that's probably the only time that it felt like work. Other than that, it's been a pretty enjoyable process.
Yeah, well, I mean, A, that makes sense, and B, I'm glad that that's the only part that feels like it's for. I mean, I think you're talking about the marketability of it. I think the authenticity of that, is marketable, in the sense that, I think what readers both in the military and veteran community and outside the military and veteran community are craving is authentic storytelling, right? Realism, right? Those who have served in the capacity that you have want to see that realism there because it reflects their own experiences and they can, place it onto the page, which is amazing. And then people who don't have that experience would like a window in, right? They'd want to view it and kind of see what that's actually like and feel what it's actually like. And I think, you talked about not writing a Brad Thor style or something that's more of a one-to-one of what your experiences were in service. I think that frees you up to actually explore probably some of those elements in a better way. I mean, I think the relationships between the operators in this story feel very real and authentic because it's against a backdrop that it doesn't feel like on the nose because this type of adventure gives you the opportunity for those lulls in the action to then have real conversations that drive the characters and their stories forward. I think I don't want to give too much away for readers, but the way that you explore, relationships that have been lost and then are in the process of being rebuilt. It very much felt like it fit into this story. Whereas if it was a little bit more of a straightforward military thriller, it may have felt a little shoehorned in, but because they're on a boat and they've got time, and there's the opportunity, right, to have those conversations that need to be had. They felt real.
Yeah, well, thank you. And it's fun to write, and and don't get me wrong, I love a good Brad Thor, Jack Carr, Brad Taylor novel. They're very fun to read. I enjoy them. I'm glad that they're out there writing them. I couldn't, so I'm glad they're out there writing it, and no one does it better than them and some of these other guys. Writing this style, like you said, it does free me up to explore other parts, other things that I'm interested in, and some of the. I get to explore the interactions between operators, former operators, outside of, I think, the normal scenarios that you see them in, which is straight operating, or in between operations, planning for it, post-operation, whatever it might be. These guys are done. They're out of the military. I think it's also something that for the veteran community, maybe there's some touch points there that people might recognize about when you do get out and leave that service and that community behind. It's a little different. It's a little jarring to a certain degree. And so whenever these characters do wind up coming back together and finding each other again, there's almost that sense of relief, sense of belonging, because they're back to what's familiar. It's like seeing an old Army buddy or an old Air Force buddy again or something. And so I wanted to kind of capture that as well.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about it is it's hard to let go of our time in service. It's hard to let go of the roles we had, the relationships we had then. And, so many of us talked about oh, here's what I want to do when I get out. And people are like, well, are you actually going to do that when you get out? And then these guys have the opportunity to experience each other doing the things that they wanted to do when they got out, right? Each of them have those different things. And then some of them are struggling in different ways than others. And then they come together and they're able to help each other through those things and see each other in the old light of man, I know that when we were on a team together, you were the best in these types of scenarios and you were the best in these types of scenarios. And man, it's actually really cool to see you in this scenario now as, one character is an entrepreneur and another, is Nate obviously is over here trying to get his PhD and chasing this ancient history that he was interested in. And it's really cool to see those characters come to terms with who they were and then who they are now, bridge that gap and give each other the space. Right. And it just, like I said, it felt very, very real and very cool against this sort of, extreme backdrop of high adventure and ancient history. What's next? I mean, I'm curious. You've already written the second one. It sounds like in the Nate Wilde series, and so I'm sure you've mentioned 3, 4, 5, 6 like on down the line. So I'm curious what your cadence is going to be like as an author as you write these thrillers. And then the obvious question is, man, has Hollywood come calling at all? Like, are you looking at adapting this yourself, or are there people that want to adapt this? This feels very franchisable in the best way.
So thank you. Yeah. So book 2, the second Nate Wilde book is already turned into the editor. So it is with her, and we'll start that process. I am in the process now of writing book 3. And then I think the cadence from that point on is ideally a book a year from that point. With regards to Hollywood or anything, no one's come knocking. There was just this past week an article that came out in the Ankler, I guess, that mentioned Desert Heist is one of the 5 or 6 IPs that are ripe for being made and put onto the screen. So maybe somebody sees that, and if they do, that'd be great. I think it'd be very cool to see it on screen as well, but nothing in the works so far.
Cool. What did you how do you go about choosing Nate's next adventures, right? So you have direct experience in the Middle East. You have, direct experience as an Arabic speaker. So there was a lot in this book that feels, informed by your direct experiences. How do you branch out and are you looking at other ancient cities? Are you looking at like that sort of specific, I don't want to use the word like template necessarily, but how are you going to navigate the adventures that he's going to have and the different MacGuffins that he's going to go after?
For sure. So I'm looking at all kinds of places. A lot of my, especially the first half of my career, was very, very Middle East focused. I've done a lot of traveling for work and outside of work to other parts of the world. So that'll come into play, and in an authentic way. So whereas I'm probably most comfortable in the Middle East, Nate's going to be most comfortable in the Middle East, and he'll have to find ways to adapt if he goes to other countries that he has maybe a little less experience in. As far as how this happens, that's always kind of the thing, right? Is how do you have a character that keeps finding himself in certain situations, things like that. And the trick of it, I think, is to make it interesting so that it's not just, okay, and today we're going to go looking for this or whatever else, but how does the character fall into certain things or stumble into certain things, or how are things thrust upon them, or how do they choose it in a way that maybe they're choosing it, but they're choosing it because it's being maybe it's really being chosen for them. There's all kinds of, that's half the fun though. It's half the fun is figuring out how to do that so that when the readers see it, they're like, oh, well, it's something different. It's not the same trope over and over again. And so I won't say anything, so I won't give anything away. But the circumstances of the second book are much different than what we see in Desert Heist. The circumstances in the third are much different than those two, in how they go about on this adventure. And the other thing is that there's, Nate Wilde is not necessarily a lone wolf character, right? So he's got a cast of characters with him. Does that mean that everyone is going to be there all the time? No. But it does mean that I have the ability to play with them and bring them in and out as need be, and as it works for the story in fun and interesting ways. And so that really frees up, gives a lot of options as well to do things in unique and fun ways that I like, and that I think hopefully the readers will like too.
You're already a seasoned. David has done well. You're already a seasoned PR on the PR front. I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about, and there's things that I'm very excited to talk about book 2 with you, because it'll open it up, right, for us to be able to kind of talk about that world building that you're describing, and people just got to go read the book to discover what it is that you're talking about. Then, like I said, it very much feels like an origin story in the way that you bring everything together at the end. What you're talking about, not talking about right now, is exciting. Yeah. Just as a fan and as a reader, and a fan of yours and a fan of Nate's and the teams, I'm excited to see where you take that, and excited to keep having conversations and talk about that. As one of my favorite I'm a screenwriter by trade. That was my education coming out of the military. I went to film school, and one of my very favorite courses that I took in film school was world building. And so it's something that is like that I love doing, like when I write, and then it's something I love seeing and experiencing when I read and watch. And so the way that you did it, like I said, that slow build, right? That sort of slow burn that ramps up through that forward thrust that kind of gets us to where we are at the end. Very excited to see where you take it, and like you said, where it takes Nate, right? As I kind of like back to that idea of belief. Like there are things that we just simply don't control, right? And I think letting go of it's not to get like too meta about it, but like even as a reader, there's just certain things you don't control, right? The author is taking you where the author wants to take you, but the character is taking the author where the character wants to go, right? And so we're just along for this ride, which is fun.
For sure, the story takes you places that you did not. I have. You brought up Stephen Pressfield before, and one thing that I love about that Stephen Pressfield says, he talks about the muse. And then you sit down, put yourself in the right space, the right state of mind, and whether it's the story or the screenplay or the song or whatever it is that you're writing will come to you. I very much subscribe to that. I do all the historical research in the background, and I do a very loose kind of outline of what I think I want the story to look like. When I sit down and start writing, the story just kind of flows through, and sometimes it takes you places that you didn't know it was going to take you, and ends up being more interesting than what you planned. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of a fun way to go about it.
Yeah, do the work, sit down, and then let the muse get to work, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Alex, this has been a pleasure. I love the read. It was a great read. I'm excited to get the physical copy and read it again at some point. And then I'm excited to read the next one and chat to you about that. But before I ask you ask an open-ended question at the end of every episode, but before I do that, where can folks find you? Where can folks find the book? This will come out the week of release.
Okay, so book is out 28 July, and you can find it where most books are sold: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Hudson Booksellers, many independent bookstores. You can find me at my website, alexdekkerofficial.com, or alxdekker on social media.
Amazing. Alex, to end each episode of the podcast, I ask an open-ended question. What's on your heart and your mind for our community right now? Could be piece of advice, something you want to get off your chest, or something you want to reiterate that we've talked about today. But Alex, what's on your heart? What's on your mind?
For veteran community specifically?
Veteran community could be the writing community, creative community, whichever one you want to speak to.
Ooh, okay. I'll do one for both, if that's all right. Veteran community is, as a veteran, find your purpose. You have to have a purpose, and it's very difficult to bridge that gap after leaving service, because most things seem minuscule compared to the things that you did, but you need to find a purpose. And your purpose can be your family, it can be your job, your career, whatever it is. Just find it, stick with it. Everybody knows the 22 a day tagline, so I won't harp on that, but it's way too many. And find a purpose, and if you have trouble with that, reach out to somebody, another veteran, friend, family, whatever, and have a chat. For the creative community, kind of what we talked about before. If you have something in you, whether it's a story, a book, a song, whatever it is, write it. And if you want to do something with it, do something with it. There's always a way. If you try hard enough and put yourself in the right mindset and orient yourself well enough, you can manifest your own destiny with it. And if you really think of something you want to do, then do it.
Well said on both fronts. Alex Dekker, appreciate your time, appreciate your energy, appreciate the words and the work. Excited to know you, man, and excited to see where this takes you.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Cheers, brother.